Thank you. Okay, I think we can start. Welcome, everybody. Good evening. A pleasure to welcome back Rabbi Yitzchak Etshalom, who really needs no introduction. He's teaches or runs the Tanakh program at Yula, gives a Daf Yomi Shir, a popular teacher of Tanakh. I believe he's working on a book on Amos now for Koren, and of course, no?
Yeah. No, it's already sitting in Koren.
Oh, it's sitting, ready to be, when's it going to be printed?
We're waiting to finish it up and get it out there, yeah.
Well, that's the hard part, when it's done to get it done. And of course, this is his original classic book, Between the Lines of the Bible, a study from the New School of Orthodox Torah commentary. So, Bakasha, a pleasure to welcome back Rabbi Etshalom, live from California, 5:30. So we're interfering with his supper.
Okay. It's even light here for another 2 days, and then 5:30 be dark. Thank God. Hi, everybody. We are about to read Parshat Toldot this Shabbat, and Parshat Toldot, I have to tell you, is one of my favorite parashot because as a Yitzchak, who has been a Yitzchak for now over the good part of a century, I always feel kind of slighted that Avraham and Yaakov get all this attention. Moshe gets so much attention. David gets unbelievable attention, and Yitzchak is sort of like somebody once described, Avram's son and Yaakov's father. So Parshat Toldot, which is the only parsha that really focuses on Yitzchak, is one that I feel a particular connection with. However, there's a little bit of a jab, which is that that Parshat Toldot begins and ends, meaning the first section and the very big last section is really all about Yaakov and Esav. And the only part that's really about Yitzchak is a part that we're not going to look at because it's considered to be the least significant part of this parsha, although it's very significant, and that's most of chapter 26, which is Yitzchak in Gerar, where he seems to sort of relive Abraham's life, sort of certain moments in Abraham's life, but as a friend of mine and teacher of mine, Rav Amnon Bazak, says he seems to improve on it. Abraham goes to Mitzrayim, Yitzchak doesn't go to Mitzrayim. Avram's wife is twice taken into a foreign palace. Yitzchak's wife is not taken, etc. But that's the Yitzchak section. I want to really look at what certainly is the climax of our parsha. It is the big moment, and it is one of the big dramatic moments in all of Sefer Bereshit. Which, by the way, let's take a step back. Big dramatic moments in Sefer Bereshit are big dramatic moments in all of Jewish history, because each one of them sets the tone for a historic pattern or historic behavior that continues. The Akedah reverberates through the generations. The sale of Yosef reverberates through the generations. And the tussle between Yaakov and Esav that culminates in the scene that we're going to take a look at reverberates through the generations. So the question is, I'm going to ask a question, and it's not my question. I like to be original, but I'm not going to be original tonight. I'm going to quote somebody who we all love and adore, a fellow by the name of Esav, because he asked a very good question. I'm kidding about the love and adore, but he did ask a good question. We'll take a look at the question first, and then we're going to come back. When Esav shows up after Yaakov got the bracha, and Yitzchak is trembling, and Yitzchak is upset and frightened, and says, or however he's responding, and says that whoever came deceptively before you, he got the bracha. Esav's response is, and it's in bold print here in the middle of the page, Havaracha achati lecha avi. Do you have only one bracha? Barcheni gam ani avi. Bless me also. And the truth is that that's a great question. When I give brachot to my kids, which when they were little, I gave every Friday night. Now I give it to many of them Friday afternoon or Thursday night on the phone, depending what country they're in. And whoever's home gets it Friday night. I don't have any of my kids pretending to be another kid so they can get the bracha. And I don't tell kid number 2, too late, kid number 1 got the bracha. I got brachot for all my kids. So why is there only one bracha to give? And why the competition for who's going to get it? So let's look back at, start from the beginning of the story, and we'll chart several pieces along the way. And on the way, I'm going to make other observations about this parasha, which are not necessarily central to the shiur, but are germane to understanding the parasha. You take a look at source 2. Source 2 takes us back to when Rivka, the young maiden of, according to the Midrash, 14 years old, is leaving home, and on her way to go marry Yitzchak, the family gives her a bracha. What is the bracha? At hayil alfei rebava, you should become multitudinous. In other words, you should have tons and tons of kids. V'yirash zarech et shar sonav, and your children should inherit the gate of their enemies, which means your kids should always be successful in battle. Right? It's kind of a strange bracha for them to give. But we're going to see that this bracha actually is quite a meaningful thing and is going to come back into the family. All right, so now let's go to the core story that we have. In the introduction, which is the first opening story, which is when Yitzchak and Rivka have their kids, and the kids are born looking very different, just as the Nevuah said. And Yitzchak has his favoritism for Esav, and Rivka has her favoritism for Yaakov. Parenthetically, we'll look at that first pasuk in section 3, which is highlighted, because I have to make a comment about it. Yitzchak et Esav kitzayid b'fiv, Rivka ohevet et Yaakov. Along the way, I just want to ask the question, well, what does this pasuk mean? How would you translate it? Anybody want to speak up? How would you translate it? I left it without translations, because I know we have a very knowledgeable group, although the source sheets, which I hope were sent out, does have all of the sources below in English. But how would you translate that without peeking at the translation? How would you translate that verse? Anybody? You want to speak up? You can all unmute yourselves, I think.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Yeah.
Just a translation of that verse.
Yeah, the et before the names.
Yeah.
I know that's grammatically correct, but it makes them sort of sound like nouns, as if they're a whole scheme of things rather than like individual sons.
Well,
in other words, like
how do you want it to read?
And she loved.
No, how would you want it to read in Hebrew?
And she loved like the ways of, or the essence of Yaakov.
I understand, but how would you want it to read in Hebrew? Now, I'm going to have to.
Congratulations.
Oh, there's somebody's got a mic open with a lot of ambient noise. So, okay, yeah.
I'm trying to control that so we can let people speak.
Yeah, go, Linda. Go ahead. Say it again. You're muted. Now you can unmute.
Mute.
There we
go.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Okay.
So I'm going to ask you. You're bothered by the et. So I'm asking you, how should it read differently in Hebrew?
In Hebrew, like I would. They almost sound like nouns. These names.
They are names are nouns.
Yes, but not pronouns. They sound almost like real nouns. The et makes them sound like things.
How would you want it to read? Give me the Hebrew differently.
So Yitzchak loved.
No, Hebrew. I want the Hebrew.
No, I'm not going to say it in Hebrew. So Yitzchak loved the way. I just leave out the et.
I know. So I'm asking you, in Hebrew, it would sound wrong. If you said Vayihav Yitzchak Esav, that's not Hebrew. You can't say that in Hebrew. Without the word et, it makes no sense.
Okay. All right.
That must be in there. Right?
Okay.
Because anytime you have a direct object, whether it is a personal name or any other noun, there has to be an et there. Otherwise, it doesn't sound right. Like Sefer. I know Ben Gurion wanted to get rid of the word et, but it didn't work. So,
well, maybe it's me trying to get rid of it. Okay.
So
leave it to you then.
How would you translate the phrase? How would you translate the
and Yitzchak loved the ways of.
No, don't add midrash in. What is the word? Just the word. It doesn't say ways here. How would you translate the pasuk? Anybody?
You can change the structure of the sentence.
No,
just say the Yitzchak ahav et Esav.
Okay, translate it.
Kitzayid b'fiv. Well,
all I'm asking is for an English translation.
Would really make a difference. And Yitzchak loved Esav
accusing them of harassing them.
Go ahead, say it again. Sorry.
Yitzchak loved Esav because he had always had hunt
game in his mouth. Good. Okay.
The Rivka ohevet et Yaakov.
Go ahead. And
Rivka loved Yaakov.
Very good. Thank you. That's all I wanted. Now, Let's take a look. Let's take a look at this. I'm going to ask you this question.
Hello. It's you have Yitzchak at Esav, and that's the past tense. Rivka ohevet et Yaakov, that's a present tense, and I think that's significant.
It could be. That could be. Although poetically in prose of Tanakh, that's how we would write it, anyways. But I want to concentrate on something else. Right away, I want you to point out the asymmetry of this pasuk. How is this pasuk, this description, asymmetrical?
Rivka's love is unconditional. Right. There's no key. We don't know why.
Exactly.
Rivka's love is unconditional.
Excellent. Okay. So you're right. Yitzchak's love for Esav is presented with the reason. Rivka's is not. So we're wondering, why does Rivka favor Yaakov? Now, the other thing I want to get to is the word ohev. The word ohev, like many words in Tanakh, has a standard translation, which is not always the accurate translation. Normally, you're right. Translate the word ahav as love.
Love.
However, whenever you have multiple characters and you're identifying as ahav, and I'll bring you an example of this, a better way to translate it is probably prefer rather than love. Right? And the great example of that is Dvarim Perek, if you want to take a look, Dvarim Perek Chaval Pasuk Tedvav, Ki tiena le'ish shtei nashim. The man has two wives. Ha'achat ahuva v'achat snua. One is beloved and one is what? How would you translate it? Hated? What's the guy doing married to a woman he hates? Ella, the simple meaning of it is that he prefer, and the one he prefers less. And that's, of course, how we have to read. And that, of course, is a commentary on Yaakov, Rachel, Leah. That's how we have to read Rachel and Leah. Yaakov loves Rachel. He prefers Leah less. She's the mother of his children. Of course he loves her, but he loves her less. So I'd like to suggest that that's what's happening here. And I'll demonstrate to you that Rivka and Esav actually have a pretty good relationship. I'll show you. But the other thing I want to point out is another fine grammatic thing, which is important to understand this pasuk. And you're right to point out that Yitzchak's love for Esav, which we're going to come back to, because it's critical to this whole story, is given a reason. Yaakov. How would you translate the vav of V'rivka? So the answer is that we have a whole bunch of different we have a whole bunch of different vavs in Hebrew. Vav can mean a lot of different things in Hebrew. Vav usually means and, but not 80% of the time, maybe 50% of the time.
Oppositional.
Vav is sometimes Vav Hanigud, right? Which is the Vav of disjunct, which is to say, but. We have Vav Habiur, we have several other Vavs. But Vav Hanigud is a very common one. And here, that's probably the preferred way to read it. You wouldn't read Yitzchak favored Esav and Rivka favored Yaakov, because that's not the point. The point is Yitzchak favored Esav, but Rivka favored Yaakov. In the opposite, contradistinctively, Rivka favored Yaakov. Okay. And now, of course, we got the question is, why does Rivka favor Yaakov? We don't know. And why is Kitzai B'Fiv enough of a reason? I mean, is Yitzchak such a glutton that since one kid gives him good food, that's why he favors him? That's kind of low. And as a Yitzchak, I take exception. All right, so let's park those questions and let's move ahead in this story, which is the famous story of the sale of the Bechorah. All right, Vayazid Yaakov Nazid. Yaakov is making lentils, is making soup. We don't know what it's made of. We're going to find out now later that it's adashim, that it's lentils. My wife, by the way, has the minhag of every Parshat Toldot. She makes lentil soup for Friday night dinner. Beautiful minhag. And then, of course, to get it, I have to be willing to part with something important. Vayazid Yaakov Naziv. Right. So Yaakov makes this food, and Esav comes from the field, whether it's from working in the field because he's also a farmer, or from the hunt. Either way, hayef. Now, what does the word hayef mean?
Well, ayef means tired.
Right. And in Tanakh, ayef also means hungry.
Okay.
Right. And you can see it in numerous places, most notably when Gidon and his men come back from killing the Midianim, they ask for food because the army is ayefim. They are hungry. And when David runs away from Avshalom, people come and bring him food because they are ayef. So ayef is hungry. All right. Okay. So Esav comes from the field and he's hungry. Now, where is this? Where is this happening? Where is this? Where are they?
Well, Yitzchak is mourning for Abraham.
I don't see that anywhere. Look at the pasuk. It's not a midrash class. This is a Tanakh class, right? Where are they right now? You're right. We don't know. We don't know.
I'd have to go earlier in the text.
Okay, we don't know where they are. The earlier text won't help you.
Well, Yaakov is Yoshev Ohalim, so he must be in Yaakov's Ohel.
But where is that? Is that, in the camp where the family lives? The family of Bedouins. We talk about a Bedouin family. They have tents, and they live in tents or houses, whatever they live, but it's out in the middle of, near Beersheba, right? So where is this happening? Where's this scene happening? So I'm going to just raise the following question. And this will determine what's happening, and it's going to set the tone for a lot of what we're going to do. Is Yitzchak's family, is Yitzchak himself a wealthy man or not? What do you think?
Yes.
He certainly should be. And agreeing with you is the Ramban, in no uncertain terms, who invokes this pasuk at the top of the page, Birchat Adonai Ta'ashir. Hashem's bracha is wealth, and Hashem blessed Yitzchak, so therefore Yitzchak is wealthy. So if Yitzchak is wealthy, who should be making food?
And servants.
Servants. What's Yaakov making food? So let's take the Ibn Ezra's approach. And the Ibn Ezra's approach is that Yitzchak was poor at this point, which is why Esav had no use for the Bechorah, because there was nothing to inherit. It's an interesting machloket on the last pasuk in this section, pasuk Lamedal. Look at the Ramban and Ibn Ezra. Will give you a great reading over Shabbat. It's great machloket.
Okay.
Now,
but
if Yitzchak is poor, who should be making food?
His wife.
Rivka should be making food. Rivka should be making food, right? And either she's got servants, or she should be doing it. Now, why is Yaakov making food? So I'd like to suggest the following. They are not at home. What does Yaakov do for a living? We are told
Yaakov
that Yaakov
studies.
Is an Ishtam Yoshev Ohalim. And all of the Pashtanim, meaning all of the Mefarshim who read Pshat, say Yoshev Ohalim means he is a shepherd. Yoshev Ohalim Mikneh, look at the Radak, look at the Bechor Shor, look at the Rashbam. Yoshev Ohalim Mikneh, look at the Ibn Ezra, he is a shepherd. Right? And by the way, this is the classic split. Esav is a farmer, Ish Sadeh, along with being a hunter, and Yaakov is a shepherd, and this is the old rancher farmer, the problem of Oklahoma, if you guys remember the musical. The farmer and the rancher should be friends because they hate each other. And it goes back to the first enmity in history, Cain and Hevel, shepherd and farmer. It's probably the problem between the Ivrim and the Mitzrim also. So, and we understand the difficulty, because if I'm a farmer, I plant, you're a shepherd, you bring your animals, they eat up all my crops. I don't like you. So Yaakov is a Yoshev Ohalim. That means he's a shepherd. Now, where does a shepherd hang out? So we actually have records from ancient herding contracts from the time of the Avot. And we know that herders would often take their sheep and their flock for great distance for days on end. Do you remember when Yaakov left Haran, ran away? When did he run away? He ran away when Lavan was out shearing the sheep a distance away. And he had a chance to get away because Lavan was far away. Herders go far with their crops, with their flock, sorry. So I'd like to propose is what happened here is that Yaakov and Esav are working together. Yaakov moves with his flock and Esav accompanies him. And Esav goes off hunting. This is during non-farming season. Esav goes hunting and he brings the hunt back and Yaakov prepares the food and they have food. Esav comes back from the field, from the hunt, and he doesn't have anything. It was an unsuccessful day. And so Yaakov, in the meantime, is making some stew. And this stew very likely is missing its main ingredient. You know what its main ingredient is? Flesh. but there's no meat. So, okay, it's stew, never. All right? Now, that's just as a side thing. The problem is that we look at a story, and this is a general methodological point in Tanakh. We read a story and we already know the end. We not only know the end, we know what Midrashim of 1,500 years later are going to say about this story. And we read them back into the story and we don't actually get what's happening in the story. You don't read it live. We read it as an already finished piece. But the Yaakov and Esav that we meet here aren't at each other. They're not adversaries. They do different things. And very likely they're working on a cooperative venture. Now, Esav comes in and he says, I want to have some of that food. What does Yaakov say is a condition for giving him the food?
Sell me your birthright.
Right. What's the price of the birthright?
A bowl of soup.
Okay, so we think so, right? However, the Radak quotes his father as saying, and there are other Rishonim who say this, that the price of, if you read the pasuk carefully, the price of the Bechorah is some price that they're going to agree on. And the meal seals the deal. In other words, I'll be willing to give you food if you agree to sell me the Bechorah. We'll figure out a price.
Okay.
Right? Now, not a big deal, but just makes Esav look to be a little bit less impetuous and foolish, selling this huge Bechorah for like a small dinner. In any case, big machloket rishonim what that means. What's the point of Bechorah? It might mean I'm involved in a risky livelihood every day. I don't know if I'm going to make it, so therefore I don't need to have an interest in futures that will happen when Yitzchak dies. And so then Esav takes an oath that he agrees to sell the Bechorah. What's the oath about? It's kind of weird. What's the oath about? In other words, if he sells it, then what do you need an oath for? The sale's already done. You wonder about that? Like, why is Yaakov asking him to make an oath if he's selling it already? So, yeah, go ahead. Anybody?
You shouldn't deny it later.
Oh, good. Very good. I like that. So one possibility is, I want you to sell it to me and take an oath that you will admit to this and not deny it. Very good. Possibility two is that Vayikor Bechorah Tol Yaakov is actually a later statement, meaning you have to swear that you'll sell it to me. Okay, you took the oath, now I'll give you food. And at a later point, he sells it. Maybe. I like what you said more. Right? And so Yaakov gives Esav the food, and he eats, and he gets up, and he walks away. And Esav starts belittling the Bechorah, which you would do in any case when you just sold it. You want to feel good about selling it, so you're going to start saying, it's no big deal, not a big deal. Now, my question is this: why is it so important for Yaakov to get the Bechorah? And I'll ask it differently: what is the Bechorah? By the way, you cannot change birth order no matter how much money you got. Yaakov is the younger, maybe by 10 seconds, but he's the younger, probably a few minutes. You can't turn yourself into the older. So what is it that Yaakov is getting with the Bechorah, and why is it so important?
Simply, it should just be the inheritance, but it could be the national inheritance as well. But I feel like the national inheritance is reading backwards into it, whereas a simple inheritance is the pshat. Okay, good. So Esther, explain what you mean by simple inheritance. I like that. As the firstborn, Esav was due to receive whatever was coming to him, whatever firstborns got in those days, which could have been women, wealth, rights. Yeah, we don't know.
Right.
Right.
All right, good. So what you're saying, I think you're absolutely right, is that whatever rights Esav as the Bechor would have in the inheritance, Yaakov is buying from him. And you can do that. And so Yaakov is investing in futures, which is that when Yitzchak dies, there will be something worth inheriting. And I'm willing to give out X amount of money today for that. Very good. Okay. Why is it so important for him to get it? Well, the simplest answer would be power, money, control, maybe. Okay, so we'll leave that alone. Now, let's get to the story itself. In the story, which starts with section 4, right? I don't know why there's 2 4s there, but 4. Vahiki zaken Yitzchak, vatichena inav miraot. Right? So Yitzchak gets old and he goes blind. Why does he go blind? And we're looking at Pshat here. Why does he go blind?
It happens.
He's old. He's old.
He's old. The Pasuk says it. He gets old. He goes. And by the way, the Rishonim who all identify that point immediately to what famous character who, when he got old, went blind?
Haley,
right? The whole story in Parak Dalet of Shmuel. Very good. All right, so he's old. Now, this happens to people, hopefully none of us yet, but when people start to feel certain power or abilities or senses starting to diminish, they may start to feel like this is the end. I am now in Kohelet chapter 12. You guys know Kohelet chapter 12, where there's this whole mashal about the body. The windows are shutting, the eyes don't work, the mill isn't working, the teeth aren't grinding. The body starts breaking down. So when the body starts breaking down, a person starts thinking mortality, and it's the end. So what does he do? Vayikrat Esav b'no hagadol. Who does he summon? Esav. Now, by the way, do we know who Esav is at this point? Yes, we do. We know. We know Esav is the older child, which means b'no hagadol is superfluous. Just Esav is enough. All right? So we have to think about this. Vayomer elav b'ni. What does he say to him? He says b'ni, which is a term of endearment. Vayomer elav hineni. And hineni, boy, that's a family phrase. All right? Avram says it to God. Avram says it to Yitzchak. All right? Now, Esav says it to Yitzchak. Later on, Yitzchak's going to say it to Yaakov, thinking that it's Esav. All right. Vayomer hineni azakanti le'adati yomoti. So what does Yitzchak say to Esav? I'm old. I don't know when I'm going to die. Meaning I could die soon. And by the way, I'm going to die means I want to put my affairs in order before I die. That's something that we see every one of the Avot do. Avram does it in an interesting way. He gets married, has much more kids, and then gives them gifts, sends them away, and gives everything to Yitzchak. Then he dies.
David HaMelech does not do it.
David HaMelech does do it, but in a different way, with his hit list to Shlomo. But that's a different thing because he's a king, so there's different considerations. But you're right. He only does it when the threat of Adoniyahu comes up, and then he has to name the crown prince. Correct. Good point. Okay. So now, so he tells him to go take his hunting weapons, whether tel yecha means your quiver or means your sword, a couple possibilities, and your bow. Right? Go out and hunt for me. Now, I have to tell you, this is mind-boggling. Yitzchak is Yitzchak Avinu, Yitzchak of the Akedah. Yitzchak thinks he's about to die, and he wants to give Esav a bracha, and so he says, go hunt me game, and then Vaselim matamim kashar havti, and prepare it as sweet food the way that I like it. And there's that word ahav again. Bring it to me and I'll eat. Why? Now, Yitzchak's about to die, so he's going to give a bracha to Esav. That's what he says. I want to give you a bracha. So question number one, which is not on the pages, why does Esav have to prepare game and bring it to him? Question number two is Yaakov now going to get a call from Yitzchak saying, hi, Yaakov, I want you to go and do X, Y, and Z for me and bring it to me so I can give you a bracha too? We would think so. Why not? Father's about to die. He wants to give a bracha to his kids. We don't hear Yitzchak do that. We do hear something else. Rivka summons Yaakov and says, this is what I heard your father say to your brother. And notice again, throughout this thing, there is b'ni, b'no hagadol, achicha. There's all sorts of extra descriptors for everybody here. Avicha, okay, we don't use the name, but Rivka imo, Yitzchak aviv, b'no hagadol, b'no hakatan. All of these extra phrases, which are unnecessary. And part of the reason for that is to stress, to create an environment of understanding. It's all about this family dynamic. And it's a family dynamic, which as a result of what happens here, one way or the other, is going to get torn up. The relationship between Ben and Av is going to get threatened and hurt. relationship between Ben and Aim is going to be hurt and threatened. The relationship between Beno HaGadol and Beno HaKatan and the confusion as to which one is which is going to get really threatened. In other words, every possible relationship in this family is going to, until now, maybe it was working okay, now it's going to be messed up. And so that's why the stress in the psukim.
And it's also interesting to note that they're twins. So
right.
Katan and Gadol is really, as you said before, a matter of 10 seconds.
Could be, right. Yeah, right. And by the way, there are those who point to, because we're going to see it in a minute, Yaakov's going to get 2 goats and Rivka's going to prepare them. Why does he get 2 kids? Why doesn't he get 1 big goat? All right, so maybe 2 goats works better because better meat, I don't know. But the Midrash has an interesting comment on it, which is that the goats are tovim lecha v'tovim levanecha. Because these are goats that'll be good for you. These are also be good goats that'll be good for your children, because it's referring to the lottery on Yom Kippur and the Sa'ir L'Azazel. And if you think about the way that the lottery happens, you have a Sa'ir L'Hashem and a Sa'ir L'Azazel, and one goes in to Hashem and the other goes out to the desert and is thrown off. And it's, by the way, it's called a Sa'ir, which also means hairy, which is how Esav is described. And it's as if to say, Yaakov and Esav, that's a lottery. Who came out first? And then one goes L'Hashem and one goes L'Azazel. Perhaps just something to think about. Certainly not shot in psukim. Okay, now let's move on. Rivka hears what Yitzchak said to Esav, and then she tells Yaakov, that's what father
told. Can I just say something?
Hold on a second. That's what she says. Father told Esav, your father told Esav, your brother, all that extra, that you should go hunting and get a bracha, and then she's going to command him to go. Yeah, I'm sorry, what did you say?
I was just going to say, Yirash, it's Sha'ar or Yevav. I wonder whether Sha'ar is a word play for Se'ar.
Oh, it could be. Interesting thought. Okay, so now, Vatam Nishma V'Koli. What does Rivka say to Yaakov?
Listen to me.
The parallel, right? Yitzchak says to Esav, listen to me, do what I'm saying. And Rivka says, listen to me and do what I'm going to say, right? Except Yitzchak did it in a much more supplicatory manner. B'ni, hineni, sana, right? And she says, you better do what I'm going to tell you. Lechna latzon, go to the flock, which is, by the way, you're a shepherd, so the flock's your thing. Go get 2 good goat kids. Now, I want you to notice here what happens. I'm going to make them into sweet food for your father the way that he likes them. Now, right away, what does that tell you about the relationship? And this will surprise you because we're not used to thinking about this. The relationship between Rivka and Esav. I'll give you a little clue.
Maybe they cook together in the kitchen.
Yeah. And who prepares the food that Esav hunts when Esav's going to bring it and serve it to father? Who actually prepares it with the cumin and the garlic sauce and the salsa?
Maybe both is what I'm thinking.
Both of them, and Rivka's part of it. Rivka knows the recipe, right? Which means Rivka helps Esav. Esav goes and hunts, and father loves him because he hunts and brings him food. And Rivka actually helps him with the food. We're going to see something more about that. And Esav comes in. Again, we start off because we look at Rivka and Esav as being mortal enemies, and Yitzchak as being blind to Yaakov. We have all of these very sharp distinctions, but it's a real family with real people, and they're not necessarily at each other's throat. And like I suggested before, it's possible that Yaakov and Esav, before this happens, actually work in partnership. Okay, so now, you're going to bring this food to your father, and he'll eat, so that he can give you a bracha before he dies. Now, I want to ask you at this point, now, of course, we know the end of the story. We know later in the story, so we know how it plays out. But I'm going to ask you at this point, what is it that Rivka is asking Yaakov to do?
Just bring the goats.
Goats, and what's she going to do?
She's going to cook the meal.
Make it the noise father's wife. And then what's Yaakov going to do with it?
And Yaakov's going to bring it to his father.
Right. And when Yaakov comes in, what's he going to say?
Ani Bahar.
What? Why? Look at the psukim. Why?
He understood why. He saw right away that she wants to fool him.
Why? Where do you see the psukim?
Ba'avur.
Yeah, bavur what? Was that bavur?
Ba'avur tevarechecha.
Yeah, so I'm going to give you an alternate scenario.
He's bringing the food in order to get the bracha.
Good. Okay, good. So I'm going to change one word in what you said, and it will change everything. He's going to bring in the food in order to get a bracha.
Yeah.
Let's play this out. Yitzchak says to Esav, I think I'm about to die. Go get me some food so I can give you a bracha. Rivka hears it, and she says, oh, today is bracha day. Go get some food and bring it to your father so you can also get a bracha. All right? There's nothing in the psukim till now that indicates anything about deception. It's surprising, but again, we always fall in the trap of knowing the end of the story and then assuming it from the beginning. That might not be what happened.
So why does it say Achi ish sa'ir v'anochi ish chalak?
That's not. We didn't get there yet. We didn't get there yet. We're not there yet. That's my point. So Rivka comes up to Yaakov and says, "Okay, here's what I want you to do. Go get me some goats, right? And bring me the goats, and I'll prepare them, and you bring it to father." And she, by the way, she doesn't say, "Hurry up before Esav comes." Today's bracha day. Bring father food. You got a bracha. Now, what does Yaakov say? Who introduces the problem of deception here?
Yaakov.
Yaakov says, hey, wait a second. I'm not the same body build. Father's blind, but his fingers work. Maybe father will feel me. By the way, why would father feel me? Why would father touch me?
Because he can't see.
Yeah, but why would he touch me at all?
His hand on him to bless him.
Exactly. I'm giving him a bracha. When I give a bracha to my kids, unless it's my phone, which it is with most of them right now, but when they're home, I put my hands on them and then I hug them and I kiss them. I hold them tight. They're my kids. I love them. Of course I don't want to give a bracha from the other side of the room. So father's going to embrace me. He's going to feel me. And then I will be a deceiver into him. And therefore,
before Yitzchak feels Yaakov, he should be asking, what are these goats? I thought you were a huntsman. Huntsmen don't hunt goats.
I understand. So what does that tell you? That tells you that Rivka understands the spices well enough so that the way she prepares the food is going to be exactly what Yitzchak's used to. Yitzchak's sense of taste is not lost at all. But the main ingredient in this thing is however she prepares it, and the meat itself is inconsequential, right?
But it is consequential. You say it's inconsequential. I think it's consequential. It's a puzzle to me.
Okay, well, you'll have to work that puzzle out on your own because I really have to move on here. Okay? So now he says, as a result of that, I'll have a klala instead of a bracha. He doesn't say, if I do that, then I won't get the bracha. So again, there's still this like multiple brachot scheme here. Instead, he's going to give me a klala. Maybe. Which is a very weird phrase, a very hard phrase to understand. The Rishonim are all over the place understanding what it means. For right now, I'll take the simplest reading, which is I'll take the klala on myself, which means I'll be responsible to fix it so that he won't curse you, maybe. Go do what I say. Now, by the way, you notice Yaakov is not bothered by the ethics of the deception. Yaakov is bothered by getting caught. And somehow she convinces him that he won't get caught. If you're interested, I gave a shiur yesterday, which is now on YU Torah, on that phrase, I went through all of the different approaches and came up with something else at the end about why it is that this convinces Yaakov that it's okay. So what happens? So he goes and brings the goats. And she prepares it the right way. And then what does she do? And again, remember the relationship between Rivka and Esav. Now, Rivka is committed now to making this deception work, although we're not sure whose idea the deception was. So Rivka brings the clothes. We're going to talk about that in a second, why this happens. Rivka brings Esav's fancy clothes that are with her in the house. You got to remember, Esav at this point is married. He's got 2 wives. And yet, where does he keep his fancy clothes? He keeps them with Rivka. He trusts Rivka. Rivka and Esav have an okay relationship. She helps him prepare the food. He keeps his clothes with her, which, by the way, makes what she does here maybe even a little more upsetting because it's like betraying that trust. But that they have a decent relationship up until this point. What does she do? By the way, there's some Rishonim who say that B'nai Gadol Hamudot are the clothes that he would use when he would serve his father. Serving his father was like a big yontif for him. And he would put on these fancy clothes to serve him. So Rivka said, Yaakov, you're going to bring the food to father, so you put on those clothes, which makes him a little bit less deceptive in that way. Okay. Now, Yaakov now is prepared and comes on in. And again, we're still stuck with that big question of Esav from the very beginning, which is, why is there only one bracha here? And now I'm going to suggest at this point that it's Yaakov who actually introduces into this interaction the idea that there's one bracha, because he's the one who introduces the idea of deception. In other words, up until he said that, it could be that Rabbi Rivka's idea was, you go in as Yaakov and get a bracha, and Esav will come and he'll get his bracha. What's the problem? But Yaakov knows something that maybe nobody else knows. At least
maybe he knows.
Else. What?
He knows that Esav sold the Bechor.
Exactly. And it doesn't seem like anybody else knows that. So now, what does Yaakov now understand that Rivka maybe didn't get? When Yitzchak summoned Esav, he wasn't summoning him as a son who he wants to give a bracha to before he dies, in which case her idea would make sense. Okay, you go get a bracha too. Moshe gave bracha to all the Shvatim before he died. Yaakov gave a bracha to all his children before he died. I mean, some of them were more of a Mishaberach, but he spoke to all of them. He understands that if Yitzchak is calling in Esav, he realizes he's calling him in not as a son, but as the Bechor. Which means that the bracha that Yitzchak is going, because Yitzchak did not tell Yaakov, you go get me something else and bring it in. Yaakov now realizes this is not a regular bracha. This is something special, like you said earlier. I think it was Esther, you said it. And therefore he says, the only way that I can go and do it is if I pretend to be Esav, because he doesn't know that I bought, and I can't walk in and say I bought it. And Esav's not going to admit to it now. So now watch what happens. He comes, and we're all familiar with Kol Yaakov, Esav. And by the way, an interesting thing in that entire scene is that all 5 senses play a prominent role in this scene. What are the 5 senses?
Smell.
Smell, good. Smell comes in right here. What?
Taste.
Taste, good. Keep going.
Touch.
Mishush, touch, mishush.
What? Feeling, good. What else?
Hearing.
Hearing and seeing. Good, very good. Now, Yitzchak's blind, right? So seeing is off the table, not exactly off the table. So let's take a look. Yaakov comes in, and Yitzchak, I didn't have these psukim, but Yitzchak says to him, who are you? He says, Anochi Esav b'chorecha, very famous. Anochi Esav b'chorecha, asiti kasher dibarte elai. I did exactly what you told me. Okay, it's not true. And kum nashva b'chla mitzedi, sit up and eat it, right? So now we've got hearing. We don't have sight. We can't have sight. We're going to have sight. You'll see. We can't have sight. So what does Yitzchak say? Shana v'mushchabani. Come close and let me embrace you and see if you're really Esav. Why is Yitzchak not sure? Because he's hearing a different voice. So we've got touch. Then what happens? How do you call it? Yaakov brings the food and gives it to Yitzchak to eat. So we got taste. Then we pick up here. Now I want you to come and kiss me. This is now no longer, I'm not sure who you are. Now it's, a kiss. Kiss your father. Yitzchak smells the clothes. Esav's clothes that have Esav's field smell or gain smell on them. Right? And wow, this smells like the field that God blessed. Beautiful. So smell is there. You see where vision is thrown in? It's a play. because he's blind.
It doesn't make sense that it should smell like the field because these clothes are the clothes that are kept at home.
Oh, very, very good. Good. So the Rishonim addressed that problem, and some of the suggestions are that Esav sometimes would wear them when he would go hunting, which I don't think works. The other is that he would actually take some of the grass from the field and he would rub it on his clothes to give it the smell of the redolent smell of the field. Whatever it was Esav's clothes. And Esav smelled. No, I think you raise a good point. It's a good point. But the Rishonim addressed that. They're concerned with that like you are. And that's what they say. But notice they say,
or it could be.
Notice that he says, hold on a second, he says, Rei Reach B'ni. And by the way, vision came in earlier because what did Yaakov say when he was afraid of getting caught? He said, Va'iti va'einav kimetateya. So there's a whole lot of play on Yitzchak's blindness here being dealt with. Okay. And
now, it's a word play for deception, isn't it?
What?
Bugadav.
I can't hear the word. I can't hear you.
Deceiving.
I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
They're the deceptive clothes.
I'm sorry. You're not coming across clearly.
Bugadav are the deceptive clothes. Bugadav.
Bugadav.
Okay.
From Boged. No?
Boged.
Okay. Maybe. Could be. Okay.
I was going to say that his clothing could smell of him because he had the odor on him and it transferred to his clothing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He had Esav cologne, right? Right. So now let's get to the nut of this. Yitzchak now gives the bracha to the person he thinks is Esav. And what bracha does he give him? So let me ask you, when you think bracha in the book of Bereshit, you think of a bracha which includes the two main items of Sefer Bereshit, which are Eretz Canaan and Zerah. And the land, right? That's the bracha of Abraham, bracha of Yitzchak, bracha of Yaakov, exactly. And that's what you expect here. And here's the big moment where Yaakov has come in, has pretended to be Esav. Yitzchak's going to give him a bracha. And what does he say? Lots and lots of agricultural success. And this sounds very much like the bracha that Rivka's family gave to her. You should enslave other nations or other peoples, and other people should bow to you. You're going to be the boss over your brothers, means the other members of the family. They'll bow to you. Notice that this bracha does not include anything about Abraham, about Canaan, or about lots of kids. This is not Birkat Abraham. What is this a bracha of? It's very simply, I am handing the estate over to you. The rights of primogeniture, which is the rights of the firstborn, in this time was, and you pointed it out earlier, was to inherit the entire estate. And who gets the estate? Esav does. What Yitzchak doesn't know is that Yaakov bought that. And so Yaakov now feels justified. He doesn't want Yitzchak to feel bad that Esav sold it away. So we'll keep Yitzchak figuratively and literally in the dark. But in the meantime, I'm going to get the rights that are actually coming to me, which is the rights of ownership of the estate. And so now I want to quickly jump to the end of this, because I see we have 10 minutes to go, and I want to get to the end of this piece, right? When Esav hears this, here we go, Lamed Daled, and this is where we started. When his father said, your brother came deceptively, he took the bracha, and he gets the bracha. Gam baruch yeh. What does Esav do? He gives a big shri. Right? He says, please bless me also. Your brother came deceptively and took your bracha. And this is really the question, why is a bracha given under false pretenses valid? Why doesn't Yitzchak just say, oh, sorry, I thought it was you. I'll give you the bracha. And I'll take it away from him. Why doesn't he do that? And that's the big question in this whole parsha. Why is a bracha that's given under false pretenses to the wrong person, why is it valid? Vayomer, Hachi Karash for Yaakov, Vayakveni Zef Hamayim, and now Esav says something that I don't think Yitzchak had ever heard before. Esav says, that's why his name is Yaakov, a beautiful little wordplay. He has ambushed me twice. He took my bechorah and now he took my bracha. Now, if Esav is saying this out loud, which he may not be, if he's saying this out loud, then Yitzchak for the first time is hearing that, oh, well, maybe what happened was right. He may be saying it quietly because the next phrase is Vayomar halo atzalta li bracha. Now, this is the phenomenon we know as Vayomer, Vayomer. Whenever you have the verb Vayomer followed by Vayomer and it doesn't change speakers, you got to wonder, why does it say Vayomer again? There's nothing in the middle. So it may be that the first part of it was said under his breath or inside his heart. And now he says, but you set aside a bracha for me. So then Yitzchak says, what can I tell you? I gave everything away to him. The story's been given away to him. And he says, do I only have one bracha? And Yitzchak gives him a mishabera. All right, so you'll be a soldier and you'll eat off the fat of the land. And if Yaakov is too harsh on you, then you can overcome it. What's going on? So let's go back to this phrase here and look at it again. Yitzchak favors Esav. Again, favors Esav. Ki tzayid b'fiv. Rivka ohevet et Yaakov. The truth is you don't need ki tzayid b'fiv. Parents love their children. And parents sometimes, it's not great, but sometimes it happens, that one parent feels closer to one child and one parent feels closer to another child. There's a couple. He's a doctor and she's a lawyer. And one of the kids grows up to be a doctor. One of the kids grows up to be a lawyer. Naturally, the parent whose kid goes in that profession feels a little closer. They spend more time with them. They study with them. They discuss things with them. Okay, they're closer. And by the way, makes a lot of sense. Yitzchak is a farmer and Esav's a farmer. They both get married at 40, by the way. Rivka, in the meantime, comes from a family of herders, and Yaakov's a herder. So it makes sense that there's a connection. But kitzai b'fiv is a little bit extra, so I'm going to suggest a different meaning to kitzai b'fiv. Not different words, but a different meaning to what the implications are. Yitzchak is not a glutton. Yitzchak is not somebody who, oh, you feed me, so I like you more. Yitzchak is somebody who, like every head of a household, every responsible adult, is concerned with the future and concerned with what's going to happen when they're gone. And Yitzchak looks at his two kids and he says, I've got one kid who is a shepherd. And he's okay. I got another kid who is a hunter and a farmer, which means in all situations, he can provide food. If there's good rain, he's a farmer. And if there isn't good rain, he can go hunt game. So who's the one that I'm going to favor as being the one to take over the estate? Esav. And fortunately, he happens to be the Bechor, but he's the one that I favor, Kitzai B'fiv. Okay? Now, what happens in this story? He tells, and this is why he tells Esav to bring him food before he gives him the bracha. Not because I have to have a full stomach to give you a bracha, but because you have to demonstrate your ability to take care of the family to get the bracha. So go hunt game and bring it to me, make it just the way I like, and I'll give you the bracha, because we will have a closeness that's oriented around the reason for the bracha. What happens? Some guy walks in pretending to be Esav and pulls it off to a T, in spite of his voice. Pulls it off to a T, to the point where Yitzchak gives him the bracha. What happens now? Esav walks in and Yitzchak goes, oh my gosh, what happened? And then he realizes, you know what happened? Yaakov just proved that he has an ability that I wasn't aware of, which will come in even more handy to help the family and can take care of the family. Yaakov is more fit to take care of the family because he has something that Esav doesn't have, which is guile. He has smarts, he has strategy. And that's why he says, Gam Baruch Yeh. He's not saying, look, Yaakov pretended to be you and I'm stuck. I said the words, so the words are, that's it. He's saying Yaakov proved himself to be superior to you because of his success with this ruse. And by the way, Yitzchak doesn't know about it until Esav opens his mouth and says, oh, well, I sold him the Bechorah. Oh, now suddenly Yaakov becomes a whole different guy in Yitzchak's eyes. He says, oh, he's the guy who should really be in charge of the estate. Now, since he's going to be the guy in charge of the estate, he's going to really take over for Yitzchak. Who did Yitzchak marry? Yitzchak did not marry a local girl. So when Rivka comes to Yitzchak and says, if Yaakov marries one of these local girls like Esav did, I'm finished, Yitzchak is very attuned to that. And he says, Yaakov, you've got to go and do what I did, marry back from the Alterheim back up in Turkey in Haran and go marry one of the family. And he sends him away. And what bracha does he give him when he knows he's Yaakov and he's sending him away? Look at the bracha here in the bottom source. V'el Shaddai yivarech otcha v'yafrecha v'yarbecha v'ayita v'kalamim. God should give you a bracha and you should be plentiful and multiply and you should become Christians. Zera. V'itein l'chad berkat Avraham. That wasn't in the previous bracha. L'cha u'zarcha itach. I will tell you, I have my two youngest sons are Abraham and Yaakov. So this is the bracha that Abraham gets. Now, every Thursday night, he's in the yeshiva in Israel. So I call him Thursday night late, Friday morning there, and I give him this bracha. Because it's Birkat Abraham. My youngest, Kobe, who's still at home, gets the previous one, because that's Yitzchak giving that bracha to Yaakov. Kind of fun. All right. V'itein l'cha Birkat Abraham, l'cha u'lezaracha itach. L'rishtachat eretz migurecha shanatan li Abraham. What's the bracha that Yitzchak gives to Yaakov, knowing is Yaakov? Birkat Abraham. Right, exactly.
But he can't give it. Kel Shaddai has to give it.
Right, but he's invoking it. He's passing it on. But when he's identifying, Yaakov is going to be the one who's going to carry on the Abrahamic tradition. Esav was never a candidate for that. Yaakov was always the candidate to be the one to follow the Abrahamic tradition. So whereas up until now, Yitzchak thought, I'm going to give the Bechorah, the running of the estate, the material power here to Esav, because he's more talented at that, and the mission to Yaakov. Instead, what happens is it turns out Yaakov gets both of them. And ultimately, what would happen here is that Yaakov would become an absentee owner. He would own the estate, but from a distance until he comes back. What happens after that, that's later Parshiot. So over the last hour, what we've done is we've looked at the whole story of the bracha, the theft of the bracha, the relationship between Rivka and Esav, which is somewhat unusual. The whole issue of the deception and where the deception comes from, why the deception plays a role, what suddenly becomes revealed in their conversations, where suddenly Yaakov realizes, since he called Esav and didn't call me, this must be the Bechorah, and therefore I'm going to have to come in as Esav, and his concerns about getting caught. He's not concerned with the ethical dimension because it's actually his bracha to get. We now understand why once Yitzchak does give the bracha to Yaakov, he actually gets it and keeps it because he's really the one who's supposed to be getting it from the beginning. Okay, it's been a pleasure, delightful learning with you guys. I hope everybody has a wonderful Shabbat, and I hope that you have new insights, hopefully, into Parshat Toldot. I see I have
a couple of questions in the chat box. If you want to take a quick look at the chat box.
I have unfortunately about 5 minutes because I have to actually give another Zoom share. But let me just see if there's anything as the
last couple of questions you may want to take a look.
Yeah, I see that there are comments here. I don't see.
Yeah.
Thank you for the beautiful brachot here. I appreciate that.
If Yaakov and Esav had a good working
relationship. I'm reading that one. I'm reading that one out. Yaakov and Esav had a good working relationship. Then what does it say about Yaakov that he requires Esav to sell him Bechorah when Esav returns from an unsuccessful hunt? So Yaakov to share food with his brother. Yeah, a good point. That's excellent. The truth is, Yaakov is a curious personality. Yaakov is one of those personalities. I said this to one of my students this morning. Yaakov, one of my non-Zoom students. Yaakov is a curious personality because Yaakov and Yosef are both people that we meet from birth and watch them grow up, and we see their foibles. Yaakov is presented as an ish tam, and that is just ironic because he's nothing tam. He's not naive and he's not guileless. From the very beginning, the first thing we meet about him is he's manipulative, he's exploitative. What we find is that Yaakov, and the Midrashim point this out left and right, through his life, Yaakov grows up and learns his lessons and gets a lot of that back. And sees that some of the things that he has done actually come with a very big price that he sees in his life. And he realizes that, I mean, Chazal come down on him for some of the, the way that he interacted in the family. So I don't know what to do about that, but I do think that the beginning of the parsha does speak about a much more cooperative relationship, both between Rivka and Esav and between Yaakov and Esav, and not the kind of teaming up that we kind of picture. Anyhow, everybody have a great Shabbat. Delightful learning with you, and hopefully see you soon.
Chodesh Tov.
Thank you very much, Chodesh.
Thanks.
Chodesh Tov, thank you. Okay. Nice to see everybody. Tomorrow morning, my share on the Siddur at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Everybody welcome. And then next week, regular schedule of Shiurim, 9, all the series continuing, please God, next week. And we look forward to learning with you and learning with your friends. I want to wish everybody a Shabbat Shalom, a Chodesh Tov. Hanukkah's around the corner. We got a couple Shiurim working on for Hanukkah. It's hard to believe Rosh Chodesh Kislev, beginning of November, but that's the way it is. And okay, everybody be well. And thank you very much. Laila Tov.
Thank you. Sweet dreams.
Thank you.